Have you ever loved Jesus deeply, yet still felt tired, disconnected, or like you were never doing enough? Maybe your faith has become another list to complete instead of a relationship to enjoy. Today on Faith Written Forward, Christine Hoy, author of Keeping Company with Jesus, Finding Peace in His Presence, shares how God led her out of striving and into a life of abiding, listening, and resting in His love.
And that wasn't who I was. I learned to have very serious discussions with God I never had before, and I felt closer and closer to Him.
And I said, okay, Jesus, what name do you call me? And I heard in my spirit, just clear as day, Christine, you are my precious pearl.
I realized that together, God and I had written a brighter future on those dark pages.
Yeah.
When we experience bad things, God's got a purpose. He's going to comfort us.
But Christine, God has written a story for each of us. Tell us a little bit about what your story is.
One of the major influences in my life was when my mother was diagnosed with terminal cancer. And I completely put my life on hold so that I could be there for her. She lived at the time 5 hours away from me. And every Sunday afternoon, I would drive down to Indiana to her home. And every Thursday evening, I would drive back to my husband and my stepson, who was finishing his last year of high school. Mm-hmm. And I did that for a year. But when my mom was first diagnosed, they told us that she had 6 months, at the most a year. And so I found myself in a place of a lot of uncertainty. And I was a planner, and that was very hard for me. I was used to control, and suddenly I had no control over anything in my life. So that was a time that I had to learn to really trust God.
When and how did you feel God leading you to write this book? Because, sometimes our life story, when we start putting it down, is a little bit vulnerable for us. And so when did you feel like He was calling you to do this?
Absolutely. Just to back up a little bit, it was after my mom had passed away, and I was sorting through a lot of the emotions and things that God revealed to me through that caregiving time with her, that I wrote my first book, Peace Beyond Perfection. And that had released early 2025. And it was the beginning of 2025 that God gave me, I don't know if you've ever done a word of the year, but yeah. God gave me the word abide for that year. So I spent time just doing a deep dive into John 15 and learning what it meant to abide. And that was coming out of writing Peace Beyond Perfection and realizing I didn't need to strive anymore to earn a place, to be good enough. Well, if I'm not striving, what am I doing instead? And that's when I learned, I need to abide, and just learning what that meant. So right. That was where that journey started.
So in your book, you share how years of striving and serving, trying to be good enough, left you spiritually depleted. What helped you recognize the difference between performing for Jesus and truly abiding with Him?
So I would have to say my gallbladder. That was a season. It was last year. I had already written the first draft of Keeping Company with Jesus, and then entered a busy conference season last summer. And then my husband and I had the privilege of being able to go on extended trip. We did Paul's missionary journey. So we were in Italy and Greece and Turkey. Ephesus was wonderful. And I also during that time was doing a deep dive into, it was a 40-day devotional, and it was just really challenging me to slow down, to live a more unhurried life. And it was like I got home and I forgot all of that because I had some major deadlines coming up. I wanted to get the book finished, and I had several other things going on, and I just hit the ground running. And God was like, whoa, wait a minute. What did you not remember what I just taught you? Right. And I ended up with a gallbladder attack one night and ended up in the hospital. Thought, okay, well, I guess He wanted me to take a week off. Well, I was in pain for 5 weeks, ended up back in the ER. But during that time, I was reminded, not for the first time, but was reminded that he's more interested in our presence with him than in our performance. And so that season just really drove that home. And I also remember praying because I'd kind of lost the delight in writing. And I remember praying and saying, okay, Lord, I don't want to go back to writing again until you've restored that delight in it. And I didn't even rush into the new year. I was probably towards the end of February, before I picked up the manuscript again and said, okay, I want to do this. And so it's just been an interesting journey of really enjoying being with him and not trying to fall into earning his approval, earning those brownie points.
How did that moment change the way you saw yourself and your relationship with God?
Well, this was a little over a decade ago. I was newly married, and a girlfriend had invited me to this women's retreat. I really didn't want to go. I was going through kind of a rough season. I was very happily married and enjoying being a newlywed, but there was a part of me that was still dealing with the shame that I experienced as a divorced woman. I felt like, I did everything right. I had homeschooled my kids. I showed up for women's Bible study every Tuesday morning for decades. I was in church on Wednesday night and Sunday morning and sometimes Sunday night. And so I didn't feel like God didn't love me anymore, but I felt like I was disqualified somehow. And so as I listened to the other women at the retreat talking about, how God had spoken to them, I was like, okay, I wasn't hearing from God. I thought this just confirms it. I'm not worthy anymore. And that Sunday morning, it started Friday night. That Sunday morning, the retreat leader challenged us about God giving us a new name. And so I went back to my room, and that was really the first time that I even identified the name that I had been answering to. My mother had called me not good enough. My grandmother had called me not good enough. My first husband had called me not good enough. And I said, okay, Jesus, what name do you call me? And I heard in my spirit, just clear as day, Christine, you are my precious pearl. I was like, really? That's how you see me? I have value. I have worth. You cherish me and treasure me. And something happened after that. We went back into the main room after we'd had our quiet time back in our individual rooms. And they had a gift for us, and it was a block of wood. And we were told that a word had been engraved on the bottom of the wood, and there was different words on different blocks of wood. And I immediately, as we were filing by this table of these overturned blocks of wood, I was reaching for the wood that I thought was the prettiest. And I just felt the Holy Spirit saying, no, not that one. And so I went a little further, and it wasn't the prettiest by far, but I just felt like, okay, that was the one. And I turned it over, and the word was precious.
Aw.
And I thought, God is so good.
Yes.
He knew that I would go home and say, yeah, that was a nice weekend. I think I might have heard from him, but he wanted to confirm that I wasn't imagining things and wasn't allowing the enemy to change what had happened and make me deny that it had happened.
I love that when he does stuff like that.
I love how he knew I needed that.
Your book invites readers to stop merely visiting Jesus during scheduled quiet times and begin sharing ongoing life with him. What does keeping company with Jesus look like in the ordinary moments of a busy day?
Good question. I like to think of it as I bookend my days with Jesus. So I start off in the morning, and sometimes I'll just say, hey, Jesus, good morning. And I think what's really changed for me is, I used to go to him, in my quiet times, and I saw that as, all right, I was big on Bible reading plans, right? And there's nothing wrong with that. Right. But I, for years, would, use whatever Bible reading plan I was filing that year, and I would read the 3 to 5 chapters or whatever it was, and check those off. Big on checking those check
Yeah.
boxes,
Yeah.
right? And I'd open my prayer journal and I'd read through pray through the list of people that I was praying for at that time. But it felt like it was something that this very, driven person, was trying to achieve, and when I started looking at Jesus as someone that wanted to spend time with me, it totally changed all of that.
Yeah.
And part of it for me was becoming captivated by him. And when I saw that, it was like, I realized I was free. I had grace, that I no longer had to check off the check boxes, right? And I could just relax and just visit with him. And so a lot of times my quiet time starts off with, especially like I've gotten in the habit of later in the day, you talked about things throughout the day. I will just take a 10-minute pause. 4:00 in the afternoon is often when I will do that. And I've been running,
Yeah.
and I just stop and I breathe. I think there's so often we rush into our time with the Lord with the same intensity we do everything else.
Right.
And I just stop and breathe and take in some deep breaths and, regulate that nervous system. And then I'll like, okay, Lord, what do you want to talk to me about? What do you have to say to me? What are you observing in my life that you see that I don't see? And I'll just sit and listen. And sometimes it'll come in the form of a word or a phrase or a question.
Mm-hmm.
And then at the end of the day, the same thing, like, okay, Lord, let's look at the day and show me, where did I not see you where you were working? And he'll take me back through the day and show me that, or show me, an observation about my life that didn't immediately, come to me.
Right.
And so I think it's that ongoing conversation with him throughout the day and acknowledging him at the end of the day. It's much more likely that our first thoughts in the morning are going to be of him and not our to-do list and the things that are waiting for us, but that he's waiting for us.
I started the same way with you. It was the Bible studies that really helped me to start understanding who Christ was and growing in my faith. But the older I got, the more experiences we go through, then I started learning, okay, so then I would start praying a lot and asking him to reveal a lot of things to me. Please confirm this. Please confirm this. And he was gracious enough. He kept doing that. And then I stepped into a different phase where it's just an all-day conversation. It's in the car on the way to work. It's sitting on my front porch. So I think as we grow in our faith, those things start to change and we start to develop that deeper relationship where we are really entwined with him. He is our friend. So I love your book cover and, keeping company with Jesus. I mean, that's where we need to be.
The title actually came from Matthew 11, verse 30 in the Message translate or paraphrase, I should say, by Eugene Peterson. And the whole paragraph starts off with verse 28, but it ends with keep company with me, and I will teach you how to live gently and lightly. And I was like, when I read that, because I don't often read the Message, but I read that and I'm like, keep company. Yes, that's what I want to do. I want to keep company with him. That's
Yes.
exactly what I want to do. That to me epitomized what it meant to abide.
There you go. The first time I saw your book cover, I'm like, that's my beach chairs. I used to sit in those chairs with Jesus.
I've actually had readers
cool.
send me photos and they'll send me the two chairs sitting there. It's funny.
How did God use that season to teach you how to surrender and just depend on him?
Well, there wasn't much surrendering when I was caretaking for my mom. As I mentioned, she was able to be with us for 2.5 years, which was about 2 years longer than the doctors had originally predicted. And then following her passing, I had, it was about 6 months of cleaning out 3 homes. That's a really long story, but one of them was the final home she had lived in that my great-grandfather had built in 1918. So I'm a fourth generation only child, and nobody prior to me had thrown anything away. Like I could have opened a museum with all the relics in this house, and just all the things I had to do to wrap up her estate. And I was tired, but in the midst of that, I was feeling like, okay, I'm behind. I've put my life on hold. I need to get back to work. So I was planning a business summit because that's just the kind of thing one should do when they're already burned out. And so it was May of 2021, and God in his mercy sent me 3 different women within a span of maybe a week and a half. And they didn't know each other. It wasn't like a intervention or anything. It was by God, but sent me 3 different women. The first one was like, Christine, you haven't taken time to grieve. And it was true. I wasn't acknowledging that I needed to grieve. I would just kept working through it. And one woman used the word lament. And so I had to learn, okay, what does that mean? How is that different from grief? And then finally, a dear friend of mine that I'd known for over 20 years just looked at me and said, Christine, you're a hot mess. And so I was really encouraged to just stop everything. And, you can ignore one person, you can't ignore 3. And that I really knew God, it was from God, not just these women that had done this on their own. And I thought, well, I'll take the summer off. I could use some rest. I'll do that. And God made it pretty clear that it wasn't just a physical rest that I needed, although that was the first thing. I think about Elijah under the broom tree, like he brought him, sustenance, food and rest, and he was able to be physically restored. But then I entered a season that it ended up being an entire year where I had to learn to surrender control, surrender the need to please people, surrender the need to not be perfect, but try to do everything perfectly. And I had set such high standard and expectations for myself, but those people around me as well. Makes you not a real nice person when you put those kind of unrealistic expectations, not just on yourself, but other people. And so I learned that I could trust him, and that in all the uncertainty, that I could surrender my plans, that I could surrender my needs to have everything go a certain way. And it was at the end of that season of rest and surrender and learning to trust that my first book, Peace Beyond Perfection, that I started writing that.
Okay. Many Christian women sincerely love Jesus, but feel exhausted by responsibilities, ministry, and the pressure to do more. What are some of the warning signs that faith has shifted from relationships into striving or spiritual performance? So what do you feel are the warning signs that faith has shifted from relationships into striving and spiritual performance?
So I think some of the first more obvious ones are when you recognize that prayer has become more like a transaction.
Yeah.
That reading your Bible is more out of an obligation.
Right. Yep.
That you start finding more and more reasons or excuses to not attend church regularly, to pull back from, your fellowship with other Christians. And then there's the things that are less obvious. And those would include when you find yourself with less, you're less tolerant of people. You snap at your loved ones, and you've lost your patience. And also, I've found that your discernment dulls.
Good point.
And that's not something that's immediately recognizable, but it's scary to have that discernment dull. As long as you're feeling, even if you're walking through a period where you're not, what's the word I'm looking for, spiritually, where you feel like you're riding on cloud 9 or whatever, where everything's good between you and the Lord. If you're walking through a period where maybe there's not disobedience, but there's a disconnectedness, you do lose that that discernment. And I have heard people say, don't be concerned if the Holy Spirit isn't convicting you. Be concerned when he, no, don't be concerned if he is convicting you. Be concerned when he isn't.
When he isn't.
Because that means you're no longer listening and he stopped, trying. And another thing is when ministry drains you, when you're doing ministry, again, out of sense of obligation, where you've lost your energy, you've lost your passion, that would be another sign.
How can someone who feels distracted, distant, or spiritually dry begin listening for the voice of Jesus again?
So I talked about that a little bit when you were asking me about some of the practices when I was talking about bookending my days with the Lord. But this is a story I share in the book about Melissa, who is going to meet her friend Kathy at the coffee shop. And she comes in and she's finishing up a call, and then she's quick checking something on her phone as she's sliding into the seat across from her friend. And she's still looking at her phone and talking to her friend, but she's distracted. And she also was planning to meet her friend and ask her for a favor. I think it was childcare or something. She needed her friend to help watch her daughter. And Kathy just reaches over and puts her hand over Melissa's phone. And all of a sudden, Melissa looks up and looks at her, and she says, "Hi," like, "Hello." Kind of,
I'm here.
Slow down
Right.
and pay attention. And, it's kind of like, I have these three little grandchildren. The oldest isn't quite 4 yet, and they're running around all the time. And sometimes you just grab their little cheeks and have them turn to look at you, get your attention. And sometimes I feel like Jesus does that with us. Like,
Yes,
hey,
absolutely.
pay attention, look at me.
Absolutely.
And to answer your question about prayer, if you imagine, whether it's at a coffee shop or whatever, if you imagine Jesus sitting across from you, do we really want to show up with a list of requests? Do we really want to show up with, "Hey, can you do this for me? Can you help me out here?" Yes, he wants to help us, but first of all, he wants to just find out he knows what's going on in our life.
Right.
He wants us to stop long enough, take a breath, and talk to him about what's going on, and to open up that conversation with him. And then he wants us to ask him, what do you see in my life? How do you see me? How do you look at me? And when I wanted to share earlier, when I was at that time period last fall where I was recovering from gallbladder surgery and I was in a lot of pain, I dragged myself to a communicators retreat. And the theme of the retreat was 1 John 3:1. "See what great love the Father has lavished on us." He doesn't measure his love. We don't have to earn his love. He lavishes it on us. And I have thought about that so many times since I heard that last November. I mean, I was familiar with the verse, but it really hit home for me at that time. And I think we need to realize that when we come and we stop and we spend time in his presence, recognizing his love for us, we don't have to earn it. He wants to, he sees us as his precious children, and he wants to lavish that love on us. And I think if we recognize that, it totally changes how we show up
It does.
to be with him.
I agree. So my last question for you is, what have you seen God do through your story? And what do you pray he will do for the lives of those who read Keeping Company with Jesus?
What I've seen, the book just came out the end of May, and what I've seen so far is, in my readers, is recognition. They realize, oh, I'm not the only one. It's not just me. And I've had so many women email me or, text me and let me know that they didn't feel alone anymore. They thought something was wrong with them, and they don't feel alone anymore. Because a lot of women are so busy. They're busy serving, showing up, doing all the things. And it's like our phones when, our phones might feel like they're perpetually on 15%. You're functioning, but that's not not at full capacity. Right. And that's not the way we're called to live, right? Jesus tells us he wants to give us life abundant, give us an abundant life. And we can't do that if we're just trying to survive on our own power, our own strength.
Right.
And also, I think that there's relief, that they feel like their exhaustion, their burnout is a sign that they have failed somehow.
Yep.
And instead, exhaustion, as we were just talking about, is a sign of trying to do it on your own. Exhaustion, disconnection from Jesus, when we're not abiding, when we're trying to do things separate, as the vine, separate, from the branch, being separate from the vine. When we're trying to do things on our own, when we're trying to be self-reliant, when we're just like hanging in there, that's not the way God calls us to live.
Right.
He wants us to rely on him. And so it's not about being a failure. It's about not really staying connected with him and not trusting him.
Right.
He's not asking for our performance. He's asking for our presence. And that's where we find the true peace.
I love that. Thank you so much for writing this, because there's so many of us who really need it. So do you mind praying for our viewers?
I would be happy to pray. Jesus, thank you that you're already here. You're already near to us. You're already keeping company with every woman who is watching this program right now. For the woman who is tired, for the woman who's been doing all the right things and still feels empty. Would you meet her exactly where she is? Quiet the voice that tells her that she isn't enough. Let her hear the name that you actually call her by. Teach us, Jesus, to stop striving and simply just to stay in your presence. Be our dwelling place. Let your life flow into ours the way the vine feeds the branch, so that what grows in us is yours and not ours. We're not asking for more to do. We're asking for more of you. In your name, amen.
Amen. Thank you, Christine.
Feeling exhausted by striving to get faith right? Kristen Hoy invites you to stop performing and start abiding. Keeping company with Jesus leads weary hearts into genuine, unhurried companionship with Christ, where peace is received and lives are transformed. Get your copy today with faithwrittenforward.tv. Every Christian book begins with a calling, a message God placed on someone's heart. At the International Christian Book Awards, we honor and elevate Christian authors who are using story, testimony, and truth to impact lives. Whether your book is already published, still being written, or only beginning as a dream, you're invited to the Author Elevate Conference and Gala September 12th. Submit your book for award consideration, connect with other faith-filled writers, and be encouraged to carry your message forward. Visit internationalchristianbookawards.com.
Maybe you recognize yourself in Christine's story. The full calendar, the quiet exhaustion, the feeling that you should be doing more for God. But Jesus is not inviting you to perform for him. He's inviting you to stay close, receive his love, and find peace in his presence. Thank you for joining us on Faith Written Forward, where the stories God has penned reminds us that we never have to walk the journey alone. Until next time, keep writing faith forward.
Thank you for watching Faith Written Forward, where we carry God's message through story. This program is possible through viewers like you and our faithful partners. Your support helps us to share the stories of Christian authors and the messages of hope and encouragement to expand our reach to lives across the world. Become a partner or sponsor today at faithwrittenforward.tv. We thank you. Until next time, keep moving forward in faith.